Back in 1991, Lexus introduced its first sports coupe, the SC 400, which soon became a Japanese alternative to the Mercedes-Benz CL. Although sport coupes were popular at its launch, that popularity dropped sharply over the next few years, leading Lexus to revamp the entire car to become the SC 430, a retractable hardtop convertible for the 2001 model year. Although Lexus intended it to be a luxury touring car, it was highly criticized for its bulbous look and lack of sports car power, eventually leading to its unfortunate label as
the worst car in the world ever.
But it's not the only car who has lost respect for simply being misunderstood. This is the story of the Lexus SC 430. This is my old car.
One thing's for sure, it is a lot more Buick Riviera than it is French Riviera.
So if you saw my recent episode on the Plymouth Prowler, you know that I can definitely understand what it's like to own a car that doesn't get a lot of respect.
Why don't you call me sometime when you have no class?
The Lexus SC 430 has suffered a similar fate, and for pretty much the same reason. It was a convertible, with a then novel folding hardtop, so by looks alone, many assumed it to be a fast sports car. However, for those who drove it, that were expecting sports car performance, they were disappointed. But unlike the Prowler, the SC 430 was featured on what was then the most popular automotive program on the planet, which helped cement its status in automotive history, and not for the better.
What sort of wood is that?
They claim it's maple.
Is it?
Easy.
But before the Lexus SC 430, there was the SC 400, that launched in 1991 as a 1992 model. The 400 was the first coupe model and third model overall for Lexus, Toyota's then new luxury brand, and was meant to compete directly with German rivals such as the Mercedes-Benz CL and BMW 8 Series, Japanese rivals such as the Acura Legend, and American rivals such as the Cadillac Eldorado and Lincoln Mark 8. Being introduced in the early 90s, the SC 400 sported a much more rounded and aerodynamic shape than what was typical in the 80s. Like its rivals, the SC 400 was rear-wheel drive with V8 power, although soon after the SC 300 was offered with an inline 6-cylinder. Sharing a platform with the Toyota Supra, the SC was built in Japan, but its exterior was designed in California, as it was originally targeted for the American market, although Toyota also offered it in Japan, where it was called the Soarer. The SC 400's 4-liter V8 engine was shared with the Lexus flagship, the LS 400 sedan. Its horsepower rating of 250 may sound small today, but that was typical for a V8 of the early 90s. Like the LS, the SC's V8 was geared for comfort, so it was never intended to do well in a drag race. The V8 was paired with a 4-speed automatic transmission, but if you opted for the SC 300's inline 6, you only lost 25 horsepower and gained the option of a 5-speed manual. However, the manual was only available until 1997. Sales of this first generation SC peaked in 1993 with just over 20,000, but slipped by nearly half only 2 years later. Despite an exterior refresh in 1996, a bump in power for the V8, and an upgrade to the automatic from a 4 to 5-speed, sales kept slipping, as the coupe market overall continued to shrink, with only around 5,000 sold in 1997 and only 600 sold for 2000. The SC would have been canceled had it not been for Toyota's plan to reinvent the SC for the new millennium. In 1999, at the Tokyo Motor Show, Toyota unveiled what they called their Sport Coupe concept and indicated that this would be the eventual replacement for the SC 300 and 400. Its design began in 1996 and was an all-new platform designed from the start to support a retractable hardtop. The production car would look nearly identical to the concept when it was revealed in New York in April of 2000. The car's profile, as well as the shaping of the hood, was intended to channel air around the passenger compartment to improve top-down driving. But the overall look was also said to have been inspired by its design team's trip to the south of France.
For inspiration, the stylists from Japan and Europe went to the Côte d'Azur to study the architecture, the lifestyle, and the harbours. Well, that's what they told their bosses they'd done.
The resulting bulbous shape definitely had its critics, but not enough for Toyota to avoid repeating it, as a similar shape was bestowed on the Toyota Solara convertible in 2004, a car which I featured in one of my first My Old Car episodes over 2 years ago, as it actually was an old car I owned. But although the shape of the trunk lid on the Solara was intended to provide more trunk space than was typical for a convertible, the trunk lid shape of the SC 430 was designed to fit around the folded hardtop. The idea of an automated convertible hardtop wasn't new, as Ford did it with their Fairlane decades earlier, and even Honda offered one on the Del Sol, although not for the US market. But the more likely inspiration for the SC 430's folding top was from Mercedes, with their SLK from 1996. Around the same time, Mitsubishi offered a folding hardtop for the 3000 GT Spider. However, that one was designed and built by American Sunroof Corporation, or ASC. and far less of those were sold as compared to the SLK. To help save weight, the SC430's top was made from aluminum, although some of that weight savings was likely negated by all the heavy interior wood trim. Like any folding hardtop, there was almost no space left in the trunk when stowed.
Hasn't got a boot either now, it's all full of roof.
To help provide a few more square feet of space, you could opt for run-flat tires, which eliminated the spare tire. But for a car that was trying to emphasize luxury, the reinforced sidewalls of the run-flat tires meant for a very rough ride. Inside, the SC430 was technically a 2+2, but anyone expected to sit in the back seat could only do so if they had no legs. The back seat was arguably the most useless of any car, then or now. If they'd offered the car with a traditional soft top, I suspect they could have provided actual legroom for the rear seat, but the hardtop forced a shorter roof, and as a result, zero rear seat legroom. But if you only needed to carry a maximum of 2 people, those 2 people were surrounded by some of the best technology of the day, including a Mark Levinson sound system, an in-dash CD changer,
This was the last car ever made to be fitted as standard with a cassette player.
and a DVD-based navigation system. This was back in the days before all cars required in-dash screens to support backup cameras, so having a screen in the dash was far from typical when the SC430 first debuted. In fact, it was so untypical that the SC had the option of hiding the screen behind a wood grain door, since the nav system depended on a DVD to provide the map data, which would now be several years out of date. The nav system is nothing but a novelty in any SC still on the road today. Under the hood, the V8 was upgraded from the old SC to a 4.3-liter unit, hence the name change of the car to the 430. The new V8 made 300 horsepower, which was decent enough for Car and Driver to consider a matchup with the Mercedes CLK. But Car and Driver wouldn't be Car and Driver without making it clear the SC wasn't a sports car, as they still tried to test it as if it was one. Still, the luxury appointments were appreciated and commendable for the early 2000s. Starting in 2004, Lexus offered a special Pebble Beach edition with unique interior and exterior color combinations, and just a few hundred were offered each year. In 2005, the SC430 exterior had a minor refresh, including new alloy wheels and the automatic transmission upgraded to a 6-speed, but oddly the V8 had a decrease in horsepower to 288. Lexus began offering the SC430 for sale in Japan, as well as Europe and Asian markets. Despite the refresh and additional sales opportunities, units sold kept dropping each year. By this point, its folding hardtop was no longer so unique, as Cadillac offered one for its Corvette-based XLR, and a year later, Volkswagen offered the same on its compact EOS, as did Mazda on its MX-5 Miata, and Pontiac on the G6, all of which were far cheaper. In Europe, Peugeot offered the 307cc, and even Ford offered a hardtop convertible version of the Focus in Europe, a fact that I totally missed in my last episode about the Focus, as I just learned about it while working on this Lexus episode. In 2008, with less than 2,000 sold, Lexus announced that there would be no third generation of the SC. But for the few that still wanted a Lexus hardtop convertible, their IS 4-door sedan lineup was expanded to include a 2-door convertible, this time with a back seat that actually could hold 2 adults. Launched in North America in May of 2009, the Lexus IS had more direct competition than the SC did when it was first launched, as the IS had to compete with similar cars on sale from BMW and Infiniti. In keeping with Lexus tradition, the IS convertible was more of a grand tourer than a sports car, and the design of the rear end of the car suffered the most to accommodate a roof for a larger passenger compartment than the SC had. Today, most luxury cars from the 2000s have depreciated considerably.
Write down what you think is the absolute worst car on sale today.
But the SC430 has had it especially rough, no thanks to a little TV show called Top Gear.
We've all written the same car.
The Lexus SC430 was featured on Top Gear not once, but twice. The first was in 2003, in only the second season since the show was revamped to have Jeremy, Richard, and James as hosts.
When it was first launched, the SC430 came with run-flat tyres, which of course are virtually solid. Fred Flintstone had a similar tyre setup on his car.
Richard did the review here, and in the end compared it to a Hyundai, which was a bit odd choice, as the two cars weren't exactly courting to the same target buyer. Back when this episode was filmed, the SC wasn't even officially for sale in the UK, but clearly enough of them have made their way there, with private sales, to make it worth filming an episode for it.
Utterly useless.
However, in 2012, 2 years after the SC430 ended production, a standalone Top Gear special that was only available on DVD would make Richard's earlier review seem tame in comparison.
But, James, do we hate it as much as we hate this filthy Lexus?
The special's name was The Worst Car in the History of the World, And after showing many potential contenders for this auspicious award,
You useless pieces!
the winner, or more appropriately the loser, was the SC430.
Well, interestingly, the electric roof takes 25 seconds to fold away.
Some who really wanted this car may have been happy with the opinion of Jeremy and James,
Twice as long as it should.
as it likely brought down the cost of a used model enough to put it in reach of those who couldn't afford it when new.
There's only one word to describe the sort of person who would buy this car. An American.
More specifically, an elderly American.
Cars like the SC430 are a dying breed, as the switch from folding hardtop to softtop has been the norm over the past few years for most of the remaining convertibles on the market. The IS250C lasted until 2017, which in turn was replaced by the LC500, which ditched the folding hardtop for a traditional softtop. The folding hardtop was once a novel idea, although ironically some owners didn't like them when the tops were up because they looked too much like a regular coupe. But the more likely reason for this fad fading was the complexity and difficult maintenance of the folding mechanisms, not to mention the lack of trunk space when the top was lowered. Those that remain aren't full convertible tops, but instead more like target tops, which are smaller and take up less space behind the seats, and are typically on mid-engine cars, whose trunk space isn't more compromised with the top down. Still, whenever I see a car like the SC430 on the road, I wish I could have them stop and show me how the top works, as I still think they're cool. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, click the like button and subscribe to my channel. If you once owned a car from the 80s to mid-2000s that you rarely see today and would like it featured in a future episode,
Lady, have you any idea how fast you were going?
leave a reply in the comments or contact me at the email shown here. See you next time.
I like your gun.